Hello, everybody. How are you? Hey, it's Thursday afternoon in Los Angeles, 3 o'clock. On the freeway. I know that's hard to believe. On the freeway in LA. Stop and go traffic. This is just a simple video talking about gratitude. And probably I'll touch on some themes and things you've heard before, but hey, that's what I feel like talking about right now, so here we go. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about how he's motivated by gratitude, that he is so happy that he was able to come from Belarus. They play hockey in Belarus? They must, right? Belarus is was part of the Soviet Union, and Gary Vaynerchuk came over as a child with his family, and he says that if he had not been able to come to the United States, into a country that rewards his entrepreneurial talents and skills, he'd still be in Russia, or he'd still be in Belarus. And he said, who knows what, it's kind of a funny line, he goes, who knows what could happen there? I'd either be a trillionaire or maybe dead. That's a good one. Gary V. And somebody on my Facebook page was talking about something, and one of the comments was first world problems. And they were just kidding around. They were joking around with the original poster, but it's so true that things that happen to us in the United States, for many people, not all, but for many people, are first world problems. And yet, and I do this too, we take them so seriously. You know, part of it is because you work hard for goals, and yeah, you want to achieve and do those things. So my message is that you should have gratitude. My message is that you should have gratitude. So here's another example. I was listening to a Joe Polish podcast called I Love Marketing, and he was in one of his Genius Network seminars, and he said, how many millionaires in the group today? And several people raised their hand. He said, how many people worth 10 million? A couple people raised their hand. He said, all right. He said, let's do it the other way. He said, would you give up your ability to speak for $1 million? And people were like, no, of course not. What about 10 million? No. All right. What would you give up your eyeballs? Would you give me your eyeballs for $1 million? No. What about 10 million? No. You know. So then he said, what about your thumbs? What if I cut off your thumbs? Would you do it for $1 million? And everybody's like, no, of course not. And then he said, what about 10 million? People, no takers, except one guy in the back goes, I've got a knife. So the point of it is, what Joe Polish was saying was that you already, without being a millionaire, without being a 10 millionaire, is that a word? 10 millionaire? You are already wealthy, because he just named 3 items that you wouldn't give up for $10 million each. Well, maybe a total of 30 million. You might. No, you probably wouldn't. You probably still wouldn't. And so therefore, you know, unless you're laid up in a hospital bed or have other major problems, which you might, but if you're just not in dire straits, you're already wealthy. So the reason I was thinking about all this was that I know I keep talking about this hockey accident, but referring to the Humboldt Broncos accident in Saskatchewan, Canada, where a team bus of a junior hockey team was hit by a tractor trailer. In this country, in the United States, a lot of times they call them semis. It was hit by a semi truck. Why do they call them semis anyway? And killed 10 players and 5 non-players on the team in the organization. So the thing is, these were not. All lives are valuable. All lives are valuable. But these guys were special. These guys were champions. I mean, they were. In fact, I think they were driving to the championship game for the season. These were not, me, that kind of hockey player. Just a hack, third string hack. These guys were like some of the best players in Canada, right? So therefore, you could extrapolate and say some of the best players in the world, and their life was gone. Their life was gone. And partly I'm recording this so I can remind myself, because, man, I have huge goals. I have huge goals, just laughably huge. And I used to tell people, but I gave that up. I wouldn't tell everybody, but now I don't tell anybody, because it was just too much for people to handle. They're like, that is not going to happen. And they might be right, but I'm going to find out. No one's going to find out unless I try. They won't find out for sure. And I won't know. So, so I have these huge goals. But, going back to that Joe Polish seminar example, I'm already wealthy beyond words, And I try to remember that every day. I really do. I try to remember that. I get frustrated. LA is a frustrating town. Just right now, we're going, 10 miles an hour. Yeah, maybe a little faster. And that's normal. That's the norm. Not always. You're not always going that slow, but it's pretty common. And any trip you take, you'll hit stretches where you're going, stop and go for a long while. And then it'll happen again, like 3 times during a trip. It's a very frustrating city to live in. And I know. You live on the East Coast, you live in the Midwest, it gets to 40 below, I get it. Gratitude and realizing most problems in the United States are first world problems. I heard one speaker say the other day on a podcast, everybody in the United States, he said, if you wake up in the United States, you are ahead of most of the world. And I actually have quit sharing that quote because the negative feedback on it was so high. And by sharing it, I mean just talking to friends. I told one friend in conversation, we were at dinner, and he said, we were talking about, I forget what we were talking about, but I said, if you wake up in the United States, you're ahead of most of the world based on the protections, the military protecting you, the law protecting you. But the thing is, a lot of people would disagree with that, and they'd say, well, maybe you, but in my situation, whatever it is, I don't want to get into whatever those might be, but many people would not say they're better off than the rest of the world. Although many people say that unless such and such happens, and this has been going on for 30 years that I can remember, unless such and such happens, I'm moving, I'm leaving the country. I can't think of one person that has ever done that has said they would, based on whatever political situation. Unless they make stuffed Oreos free Unless stuffed Oreos are free, double stuffed Oreos are free, I'm leaving the country. You're not leaving. No, it's not. You know, people are fighting to get in. You know. And that's the other thing too, man. Jeez, we've got to make it easier to become a citizen. It's just got to be easier. It's not that it should be easy, but it should be simpler. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I talked to some dude from Norway. He said it took him 16 years. He's a computer engineer. It took him 16 years. Somebody told me it costs $750 just to apply for the test. Now look, I live downtown. I've walked through the convention center many times, at least 10 times over the last 14 years that I've lived downtown. At least 10 times, maybe more. Cutting through the Staples Center / convention centers, cutting through the convention center. On the afternoons that they are awarding citizenship to the people that have passed and qualified and passed. You have never seen a happier group of people. You have never seen a happier group of people than people that just became American citizens. And we're talking from all over the world. I mean, it's an amazing thing. You know? And, you know, as I walk through, there's probably, I don't know, 1,000 people, 1,500 people, you know, and their families. It's just an amazing thing. And so people want to become Americans, and we've just somehow got to make it less onerous and less expensive. And people say, well, it should be hard. I'm not saying it should be a challenge, but something tells me, and I don't know, this is where I'm talking off out of my hat, because I don't know, out of my hat? I'm talking out of my hat! Coming to you live. I don't know what I'm talking about, but just from the feedback I've got from people in conversation, it just seems like it takes too long. When a computer engineer from Norway takes him 16 years, and this guy was a successful guy. This guy's contributing to the economy. I mean, his house is huge. You know, isn't that the whole deal with the United States? That is our thing. That's what we do, is immigration. we should be the best in the world at immigration. And I don't mean just letting in anybody, but I mean, if you read up on it, I've done some reading on it, it's a mishmash of different rules, and there's not a cohesive system. You know, these senators come up with some rule that they tag on to help their district or whatever, to some bill. So you got this mishmash of different rules and regulations. It should be redone. The whole thing should be redone. And include some path to citizenship. They kick out this guy up in Minnesota who lived there 35 years. Now, come on. We can't figure out a way. Of course he can't apply. He's an illegal alien. So what? Do you think he was, the guy was a regular guy with a family. He's doing what you're supposed to do in America or anywhere. You know, he's being productive and creating a, you know, pursuing happiness, the pursuit of happiness, right? I'm going off on another tangent, so I don't know what that guy's deal was, but when you're in a country for 35 years, there should be some path to citizenship. I'm sure all this has been covered by people that are more knowledgeable than me, and so I'll have to do more reading. But at this point in time of my knowledge bank, it still seems too hard, too long, too expensive. Yeah, that's all I have. That's all I have. In this daily dose of Ditzel, I guess my message is I have gratitude. And I'm thankful. Now, if I could just drop 40 pounds, if I could drop, as soon as I drop 35 to 40 pounds, then I'll be happy. I'm kidding. Everybody relax. Talk to you soon.